مشاهدينا الكرام، أهلا ومرحبا بكم في هذه الحلقة من مقابلة خاصة. يسعدنا أن نستضيف في حلقة اليوم معالي وزير خارجية النرويج إسبن بارت أيدا. بنرحب بحضرتك معنا طبعا في قناتي العربية والحدث. Welcome, Mr. Secretary. Of course, you made some statements recently in Davos saying that Norway, with allies, working with allies, a number of European states, concerned Arab countries, and the United States, you are working on a concept for a unified Palestinian government that could attract reconstruction funds. Can you give us more details about this plan or the nature of it?
Well, in principle, the core of this is an Arab foreign ministers initiative, which I very much support, which is to try to develop a comprehensive solution to the deep tragedy that we are now seeing in Gaza, but also on the West Bank, where we can combine the work for a ceasefire and increased humanitarian effort in the short run to a longer-term process towards a Palestinian state connected to regional peace. And regional peace means normalization with those Arab states that have not yet normalized relations to Israel. And this has been, as you well know, there's been a process for this for many years, but in many ways the Palestinian question was a little bit lost in all this. Now I think everybody understands that these things might be connected. So this is the broader framework. Mm-hmm. And inside of that, it is important that we uphold and strengthen the Palestinian authorities and the Palestinian institutions. They are currently in charge in Ramallah and parts of the West Bank, but they have limited influence in Gaza. And if we want to have a Palestinian state, and if we want that Palestinian state to be one state, a unified Palestinian state run by the Palestinian authorities, we also need to make sure that they are able to govern, that they have the resources, the money, the competence, the people to actually govern the entire territory. So that work is a part of a bigger concept of a two-state solution and regional peace.
How far did you reach in that plan?
Well, it's not a plan on the table yet. And of course, there are parties to that plan that are not yet totally involved. But we have a good conversation with the Palestinian authorities. I spoke to the Palestinian foreign minister. I'm speaking to other authorities. We are good friends of the PA, which Norway has been supporting since they were set up. And as good friends, we also tell them that we want to help them, but they also need to help themselves to prepare themselves for a broader role in the context of a two-state solution. Because in this deep, horrible tragedy, with a lot of humanitarian suffering, a lot of catastrophic situation in Gaza, very worrying trends in the West Bank, there is also an opportunity. And the opportunity is that the world wakes up to the fact that there is only one way out of this in the long run, which is that the right of the Palestinian people to have their own state is respected, that state is established and recognized, and that we have mutual security guarantees between Israel on the one hand and the Palestinian embedded in a broader regional context. That is the only solution. And 1.5 days ago I was in New York. I spoke at the Security Council, and I could hear that in addition to Norway, of course, all the members of the council and all the other ministers present were saying we need a two-state solution, and we need it now. We cannot wait years. We have to move forward now.
Yes. Can you elaborate on the role of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza?
Yes, in principle, the idea was that the Palestinian authorities based in Ramallah would be in charge of the West Bank and Gaza. But by in 2006, 2007, developments led to the Hamas taking control of Gaza, and you saw a deep division internal to the Palestinian side, where Gaza was Hamas dominated, whereas the rest was dominated by Fatah, PLO, and the Palestinian authorities. We want to see a situation in which you have one Palestinian authority that is represented in a future reconstructed Gaza as well as in the West Bank, and that requires a lot of work, of course, obviously with the Israeli side, for get them to accept this, but also to strengthen and embolden and create a more effective Palestinian administration, so that one day they can be in charge also in Gaza.
What is Norway's role in the talks about the unified Palestinian Authority, if it's going to be unified in both?
So I want to say first that it is not, I mean, in Norway we only make our own governments. It's not our job to tell other countries or people who should run their country. So the composition and choice of people is obviously a case for the Palestinians. And I know that some media reports created the impression that we are involved in picking people. Of course we are not. That's a Palestinian issue. This has to be a democratic Palestinian decision of the people in Palestine. But what we do know, and where I think we agree with both with Egypt, with Jordan, with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar, with UAE, with many of the other states of the region who care about this, is that in order to have a two-state solution, we cannot only recognize the theoretical Palestinian state, we need a real Palestinian state, and a real Palestinian state, as every other state, needs to have an effective governance. They have to have resources, they have to have teachers, policemen, health officers, and they need to have real authority throughout the territory. And that has been undermined both by Israel and settlers, but also by the division on the Palestinian side. So we have to overcome that Palestinian internal division in order to have a credible Palestinian authority that can in the future work with Israel as a state. So you know, in this big puzzle, which is the Israel-Palestine conflict, we are looking at both the immediate, which is stop the killing now, which is Norway called for here in Cairo actually, in October at the Cairo conference. I believe I was the first Western country to say we need a sustained ceasefire. Yes. Now many European countries have come on board, but we took the lead, which is imperative. It has to happen, but it's not the solution in itself, because just rewinding time back to 6th October, so the day before the Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel and the subsequent Israeli attacks on Gaza, is not the solution, because that was not the stable solution either. So you know, we need to stop the war, but stopping the war is just one piece. We need to get massive humanitarian support into the people in Gaza who are now, almost everyone in Gaza are now not living where they used to live. Everyone in the north has moved to Khan Yunis or Rafah, and even people in Khan Yunis and Rafah have been moving around. And I was just listening to people who had just been there and came out a few days ago. It's really hell on earth. So you need a humanitarian effort, but neither ceasefire or humanitarian effort is a solution. It's a prerequisite for a solution, but the solution must be political. So we work on the immediate and we work on the long term. And why does Norway, which is far away, deal with this? Well, because the Oslo Accords came from Oslo, yes. And we have been, and for the last 31 years, we've been chairing the what is called the HALC, the Ad Hoc Liaison Committee, which is a more understandable language. It's the Donor Coordination Committee for Palestine. So we have a responsibility here that we take very seriously.
Norway, as you said, for 3 decades have been chairing the donor committee, the AHLC. Now, Israel is considering the file of transferring Palestinian tax funds to the Palestinian Authority, and there's a proposal to transfer the share of Gaza Strip to Norway as a deposit to be maintained in favor of the Strip later. So, I mean, do you share the same ideas, or do you have comments?
I can say that we have offered ourselves as middle station, in a sense, for the money that in the perfect world was transferred from Israel directly to the Palestinian authorities, because this is money that belongs to the Palestinians. They are not Israel's money, they are Palestine's money. But because of the nature of this whole system and look at the nature of the West Bank in particular, some of the taxes and fees are collected by Israel and then to be transferred to the PA. And this used to happen. Now that has been blocked, particularly by Finance Minister Smotrich in Israel. And we've been working with the Palestinian authorities, with Israel, with the Americans, to look for a way in which we can help channel this money so that the money comes where they belong, but in a different way. And that's what I can say. We're close to a solution. It is not completely done yet, but there's a positive collaboration on this from the concerned parties.
Okay. Norway served as a facilitator between Israel and the PLO that led to the Oslo agreements back in 1993. Since then, Norway has continued to play a role to revive diplomatic channels between Israel and Palestinians. Well, having played that role, can you define your current efforts as a mediator between the Israelis and the Palestinians with what's going on?
Yeah. So, there are many countries involved in this, and you have this Arab Ministers Initiative, which I very much support. You have an increasing engagement of the American president and the US administration, which are also increasingly critical of the way that Israel is conducting its warfare in Gaza. The Europeans are trying to coordinate, and we speak to all of these. So we still have a role in this. But there is not the current mediation efforts as it was in '93, because that's not happening right now. We are building on the institutions we already have, the HALC, the role that we have, the fact that we know everyone in the region, we speak to everyone in the region, both states and other groups, and we are a respected partner. So we try to use this to see where we can fill in, both on the immediate, on the humanitarian, but also on the long-term political. But I have to say, I don't think the next peace will be necessarily made in Norway. I would be happy to see it made here in this region, but we would like to be helpful because we have this role of HALC chair.
Yes. After more than 100 days, the crisis in Gaza is worsening.
Yes.
Israel haven't reached any of its goals. How can the international community exert or put more pressure on Israel to reach a complete ceasefire, not a truce? Taking into consideration the latest Israeli Prime Minister's statements saying that the third stage of the war in Gaza will continue maybe more than 6 months.
Well, I agree with your assessment that the military goals have not been achieved. The stated goals of Israel is to eliminate Hamas. To the best of our knowledge, that around 70% of their fighting force is still capable to fight, and you see there's still fighting going on, and to release prisoners. And the only prisoners that were released when there was a temporary truce, where more or less half of them were released thanks to Qatari mediation, and many of us played a certain role in that. And after that, we've seen, I think, 1 released by military action, 3 were shot dead by Israeli, and 3 Israelis were killed by Israeli forces, and the rest of the hostages are either still hostages or some of them might even be dead. So on neither front there has been a particularly successful military action. What has been tragically very effective, and I say that in quotation marks, is the destruction of Gaza, where in Gaza North and Central at least, most of the infrastructure, buildings, water supply, electricity has all broken down. And we are now speaking of 25,000 killed, but these are people killed by the fighting. But a lot of people are dying now from other reasons, spread of diseases, lack of basic services that will keep you alive. People with cancer who used to get cancer treatment who cannot get it. So you see this, and it's really a unique situation. The planet has many horrible places. There's no shortage of tragedy on this earth, but normally you can at least flee. Here you can only move around, so you're not getting anywhere. At least those people who didn't have a second passport, they are not getting out. They're moving around, and they're moving around in a place that is like an open air prison. It's really, really horrible. So this has to stop. We say this very clearly. There's a growing, the last vote at the General Assembly, 153 countries, including Norway, voted in favor of an immediate...
It has not been implemented.
It has not been implemented. So now we need to get this to the Security Council. The Security Council was almost paralyzed for months, but it is moving. There is movement there to a stronger voice of the Security Council, and I think that it's interesting to watch the relationship between America and Israel, because America, as we know, has been Israel's main backer, but the critique of the behavior of the Netanyahu government is growing also in America and at the highest levels. That's helpful.
Okay, with the escalation of the unrest and the war in the region, having met the Iranian foreign minister in Switzerland, what was the outcome of your meeting?
Yeah, so I met almost everyone in Switzerland. So we meet all the foreign ministers of the regions, including Iran, because this has been, meeting people is not like agreeing with them, but we think we need to have the channels open. Well, of course, that was very much related to the risk of regional spread. We are worried about what's happening in Yemen with the Houthi attacks on the ships in the Red Sea, which allegedly is against Israeli interests, but actually ships from many, many countries that had nothing to do with Israel, that were not destined to Israel, that were not owned by Israelis and not transporting goods to Israel, have also been attacked. So we are very clear directly with the Houthis and with Iran, who know the Houthis well, that this has to stop. But we also underline to everyone we meet that the core problem in the Middle East is the lack of a Palestinian state. So as long as we don't solve the quintessential core problem, we will continue to see the risk of spread to the Red Sea or to involvement of Hezbollah in Lebanon, and even what we have seen recently in Syria, Iraq, and in Pakistan.
Yes, Norway is one of the countries which joined the US-led Operation Prosperity Guardian military effort in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden against Houthi attacks. Now, how long will this operation continue, and how far is it successful to restore maritime security? So
the Prosperity Guardian, which we contribute to, is a maritime operation geared to defend the ships out at sea. So it's not Prosperity Guardian that are attacking Houthi bases. Prosperity Guardian is doing local defense of the actual ship traffic, meaning shooting down drones or incoming missiles against ships. So that I think is a very important mission. That is there to uphold normal flow of traffic. Very important also for Egypt, by the way, because if you want to come to the Suez Canal, you will have to pass by the Red Sea. There's no other access. So this really matters for global trade, and diversion of all ships around the Cape is extremely costly and very unhelpful. So we need to have that operation in place. But again, this is a sideshow to the real show. Yes. So we need to deal with it in the Red Sea, but we also need to deal with the root causes of all this.
Okay. Well, Norway believes that Israel may not have not fully respected international law. Israel is facing a genocide case in the International Court of Justice. How possible can this change the course of war in Gaza?
So tomorrow, Friday, around midday, there will be a first communication from the International Court. That is something we should all follow very closely. It will not be a final decision. They will not declare that genocide has happened, or that it has. I believe that it has not, but it will say where it is, and it will give some preliminary conclusions. I think the world needs to listen carefully to what the court says. This court has to be taken for real, because it's the highest court in the UN system. It's a primary organ of the UN, and we will put a lot of emphasis on what their preliminary conclusions will be tomorrow. But I think it's proper to wait to tomorrow to see what they actually say. What I do say now is that we have to, as the world community, if we believe in the rule of law in the international system, we have to believe in the importance of the International Court in The Hague.
Well, the Russian-Ukrainian war is approaching its second year. Has the war in Gaza affected the European aid to Ukraine?
It has not affected the European aid to Ukraine. In Europe, we are adamant to say that this is a blatant violation of international law. Russia invaded a sovereign independent country, Ukraine. That is not acceptable. Remember, there are many wars, and a lot of wars in which a lot of suffering happens, but interstate war, one country invading another, is thankfully very seldom. That is not the normal state of affairs. So we have to react to that. So Europeans remain very supportive militarily and through civilian resources of the cause of Ukraine. However, I agree with you that it has affected the global discussion, no doubt about it, because we Europeans were building, I think, a strong and good case that we have to react towards Russia's aggression. I think that is still true. But I also I understand, and I have also said openly, that if we want the key principle of international law, is both international law between states, but also international humanitarian law that regulates how warfare can be done acceptably, we have to apply the same principles to all cases. And if there is a perception in the Arab world or in the global south that we pick and choose from these principles, that will undermine the principles themselves. So that is one of the reasons that we, who are very supportive of Ukraine, also has come out with a strong support to what's happening to the people in Gaza, because we think principles are there to be applied.
Yes. Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you so much for this interview, but I will have to do that in Arabic. معالي وزير خارجية النرويج اسبن بارت ايدا، شكرا على هذه المقابلة، وشكرا لكم مشاهدينا الكرام على حسن المتابعة، وإلى اللقاء. Thank you very much.
شكرا.
Thank you.
Thank you.